Hello there, and a very warm welcome to Chazingdra Chats, the show where we take a stroll through the life stories of people in the Pokemon community, discovering the 6 Pokemon on their dream team along the way. I'm Charlie Merriman, merry by name, merry by nature, otherwise known as Chazingdra, a host and commentator for the Pokemon Video Game Championship Series, and a content creator. And this week, as every week, I very much hope my guest and I can make your day merry, because I have the honour of being joined by TomahawkUK, aka Farid Anis. Farid, Tomahawk, of course I know you better as Farid. How you doing?
Charlie, that's really kind. Thank you. That was my favourite one of your intros, to be honest. I listened to them and I'm just like, every single time he really nails it. And I don't know if you've scripted them beforehand or practiced them loads, but they just come off so clean. I love it. But no, really happy to be here and looking forward to our chat.
Well, thanks very much, Farid. Yeah, no, that was entirely off the cuff. I mean, it's not like I wasn't reinventing the wheel there, but yeah, I know that in Go, obviously, you refer to each other by your in-game names, but you know. To me, you are Farid. And you and I met, of course, back in January this year. I mean, that was approaching 10 months ago now, and that is very baffling to me. We were in a meat restaurant. And then I became aware of the legend that is Farid, someone who has so many incredible finishes to their name in various tournaments from across the seasons, and someone who is now a caster, of course. But I'll leave you to give more of an introduction to yourself.
Sure, thank you, Charlie. Yeah, so I was a player in Go, and I was enjoying it so much. I was really going for World Championships, and I qualified for Japan Worlds, which I'm sure we can talk about more later. But then I also got the opportunity to cast, and we met when I knew I would be casting, but actually when I was competing as a player. And so that was in Liverpool in a meat restaurant, which is where all good stories start. So it was like an all-you-can-eat, wasn't it? And we were talking about it the other day, and I missed that place for sure.
Yeah, and of course this season the UK event is going to be in Birmingham. So yeah, a trip back to that meat restaurant will have to be on the cards for another time. But yeah, a baffling place. Come around with skewers of meat for you to choose, a traffic light system to show if you wanted more or not. But I gotta say, Farid, this episode is about you, not Fazenda, the meat restaurant in Liverpool. So, shall we do it? Let's take a deeper dive into you and the 6 Pokemon on your dream team. What we're going to start with here, very interesting, moving to Guernsey.
Yes, so I was born in England, and when I was very young, my family decided to move for work to Guernsey in the Channel Islands. And a lot of people don't know where Guernsey is, what it is, but it's a part of the Channel Islands which are in between England and France, actually closer to France, but very much anglicised. And I moved there when I was very young, 6-7 years old. And that was quite an important moment in my life, because it set a different standard for how my parents were to me. And by that I mean that when I was in England, I was very close with my grandparents. Physically, but also relationship-wise, they were very involved with my upbringing when I was very young. And my grandparents are very religious. And there are positives and negatives of that, which, when we moved to Guernsey, changed the way that kind of I was brought up, and the values versus the faith that I had been used to, and that I think my parents had been used to as well. And I think one of the key things for me at that time was trying to fit into a place that, truth be told, had not had a brown family come before. It was a very, very white area, and it was very difficult at the time to have a sense of identity. And it was always a case of feeling that actually someone framed it in a funny way the other day. It was, I was too brown to ever be considered white, but too white to ever be considered brown. And that was a very strange thing about growing up in a very white area without the religious input that I once had, but also without any sense of belonging to Guernsey in that sense, which is a very, I don't want to say insular place, but they have their own ways of doing things. So yeah, that was moving to Guernsey, and as part of growing up, it was a case of trying to find myself and decide who I wanted to be and what I wanted for my life and for my upbringing, and trying to balance the way that my parents thought you should parent, the way that my grandparents from afar felt that you should be as a person as well as anything else. And yeah, I think that was quite a key moment for me, and one that I will always look back on and think to myself, how well did I balance that, and how well did I manage it?
So, how old were you when you moved to Guernsey?
It must have been around 7 years old.
Oh, 7. Oh, okay, so a bit later than I was expecting that. And then how long were you there?
15 years. Pretty much.
Wow, okay.
15 years. So
yeah. I mean, as you say, Guernsey...
university as well, to be fair. Like, when I was at uni, but then coming home in between.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
As you say, Guernsey, a pretty remote place, and to, spending childhood there is one thing, but then to go through your teenage years as well in Guernsey, I mean, how did you find that? Did you feel isolated?
Even now, looking back, I wouldn't say that I have the fondest memories of school, and I only really started to find myself when I went to university, and when I started spending more time with people that I felt were similar to me. And I think part of that was also about university being a little bit more culturally diverse and a little bit more accepting. And I didn't experience that in quite the same way when I was growing up, but I also didn't really realize or appreciate what I was experiencing at the time, because it was all new for me. And just to give a bit more context as to the move, so I moved very shortly after 9/11. And that was at a time where the parents of my friends, when I was very young, would take their kids and say, you can't play with him anymore. He's not safe to play with. And that was difficult because my parents only ever explained that to me when I was an adult. And I didn't know it at the time. I thought it was because I'd done something wrong. And I kept being moved out of schools and taken to this new place. And there was a sense of frostiness and isolation that I felt was part of my personality. Maybe it was, but there was also a large factor that was out of my control that I didn't really appreciate at the time. And that was difficult and also bitter to think about when I look back on it as well.
Oh my goodness! Wow. Yeah. What a. For someone, as you say, it must have been incredibly difficult for someone that age to try and come to your own terms with why people were no longer wanting to play with you. I'm very, very sorry to hear that. Okay, and then beyond that, I mean, this was kind of leading into what I was going to ask next. Beyond that, looking back, would you say there were things that maybe you didn't quite comprehend at the time that now you look back and think, oh, it's because I looked different from other people? How far are you aware of that at the time? To what extent was it a dawning realization?
Yeah, I think there were a number of things that, in doing my best to try and fit in, I always wanted to fit in. And in doing my best in trying to fit in, I had to depart so far away from who I felt that I really was and who I actually wanted to be. And that was quite a difficult struggle, I suppose, in working out who other people wanted me to be versus the type of person that I did versus the type of person that my parents were ushering me to become. And I felt like there was a lot of conflict in which type of person would be successful in the environment that I'm in. Because it was very easy for my parents as adults to mix and fit in with, more mature people that were more accepting. And it was very different for me to feel different, but not understand why in practice I couldn't blend in with everyone else. And I think that actually built a lot of resentment in me, both to myself and towards others at the time. And I do remember growing up and being just angry quite a lot, just feeling so out of place that it created resentment, almost undirectioned resentment. And that was definitely a journey that, when I look back and when I was in my early 20s, I remember spending a lot of time reflecting, thinking, and trying to digest that journey for myself. but also have a lot of sympathy, because it's, we're all trying to navigate our own stories, right? So yeah.
I look forward to diving more into that very journey shortly. Final question on this: do you have siblings?
I do. I have 3 younger siblings. We're all boys, so we're very close.
Yeah, and I suppose that adds to it as well, the fact that you were the oldest sibling. You were sort of, I'm sure your younger brothers all experienced what you're talking about in their own way, but I guess you didn't have anyone to look up to and ask, for guidance. Is this similar to your experience? But I hope that over the years you're all able to share your thoughts on that, and hopefully take comfort from each other on that.
So I think that my brothers and I probably all had different experiences, partly because I personally feel like the way that my parents have been with each of us has changed, both because of the different personalities of myself against my brothers, but also as my parents have grown, their approach to things has changed. I was very much a guinea pig eldest sibling, and so the way that my mum and dad were with me is so different from the way that I see that they are with my youngest brother, who's 12 years younger than me. And I do look forward one day to maybe speaking with my brothers more in detail about their experiences growing up, and particularly with reference to my parents. But it's also not something that I do have a lot of sympathy for parents, particularly with their first kid, because no one really knows what they're doing. Yeah, we'll see. My youngest brother, he's doing his A-levels now, so he's still a kid in my head, and we'll see where it goes.
I'm sure there'll be many illuminating conversations to be had, and now it's time to learn what the first Pokemon is going to be joining your dream team. Now, as a reminder, the aim here is not for Fareed to build the most competitively viable team in any way, just the Pokemon that have been most special to Fareed over the years, and Fareed can define that for himself in any way he chooses. I have no idea what they are, so let's find out together. Sure. Fareed, what's the first Pokemon on your dream team?
The first Pokemon is Annihilate.
Ooh.
And this is a Pokemon that actually I'm picking for so many different reasons. In terms of competitiveness, it was actually very competitive in Pokemon GO when it was first released, and we're expecting it to become popular again when we have future updates as well, because we've always called it one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse with its ghost fighting typing. But there are a number of things about Annihilate that also resonate with me personally. And I think touching back onto a lot of the feelings that I had growing up, and almost a resentment, but also there was an anger and a rage and an internal fire. And I think that there are aspects of that you see in the Pokemon that Annihilate is. And there is that kind of synergy between using that negative energy in a direction that takes you forward. And that is something that I think was an aspect of my personality, particularly when I was younger. And Annihilate has then become a Pokemon that I feel very close to. Not necessarily because of that, but also because of the way that I've used it in Pokemon GO especially. And actually, Lou the Pikachu, another caster, VG and GO, drew a Pokemon for me to wish me luck at the World Championships this year in Hawaii, and she chose Annihilate for me because she knew how much I liked it. So I actually have this to hand. I can actually show you this. This is the Annihilate that Lou the Pikachu drew for me, which I thought was very kind, and also obviously incredibly talented from her.
Lou the Pikachu, of course, Lou Axios Chromie. If you haven't listened to the chat that I had with Lou, then do check that out. That's on the channel. The 30th episode, yes, Pokemon video game and Pokemon Go caster. Absolutely beautiful artwork there. And I think that's a really fascinating identification you have with Annihilate. The idea of taking that rage and channeling it towards something positive is, it's a very important thing to be able to do, and something that could make some headway to making the world a better place. So, and of course it's got that competitive connection as well, so a really, really fantastic choice there.
I actually looked into some of the abilities of Annihilate in the main series games, and the 3 that I saw were Vital Spirit, Inner Focus, and Defiant. And I just thought that spoke volumes, and I resonated with that, or at least there's a part of me that knows that a younger version of myself very much resonated with that.
Yeah. I think the fighting type really resonates with you as well. You're an athletic person. And wow, okay. Always also really interesting to hear you choose a much more recent Pokemon as the first member of your dream team. We'll see how that develops. The Ghost Fighting type, Annihilate, welcome to the team. And from there, gentle reminder, if you're enjoying the episode, please do like and subscribe. The standard YouTube content creator thing. All these things really do go such a long way. As Fareed can also attest to, I'm sure, as someone who's also very recently started their content creation journey. So thank you very much. But we're going straight over from there into, appropriately now, your early gaming experiences with your brothers.
Yeah, so for a number of reasons, it was always the case that most of my social experiences when I was younger were actually just with my brothers. And that's both because, you know, if I'd want to do something with friends, my mum would be like, well, you know, you've got a lot of brothers, why don't you do something with them first? And that also just, we felt very close because, especially as we've mentioned before, when we didn't feel as close to other people, it was very easy to sit back and do things together. And as I say, 4 of us, all boys, you know, almost a football team, little football team. And we used to play so many different things together. And one of the key memories for me is when we were all playing Yu-Gi-Oh, the card game. And this was probably the first time that we could all play something for ourselves and have an almost unique identity in the way that we played, because we all had different decks. Most of the time, I would build the decks for everyone, and I would tailor them to what they wanted or what they needed, just because I was older and would spend more time looking into it. But also, this was the first time that I really found myself driving into a game to the point where you could almost say it was obsessive. And I'd like to sometimes say to myself that these obsessive tendencies have positives. I'm sure they have negatives as well, but I think that they, for me, they've come out in a positive way. If you can channel it in a positive way, and playing Yu-Gi-Oh with my brothers was the first time I saw kind of a drive inside to really get good at something. And I actually remember sitting in my room, and I'd sometimes just be playing against myself. I would almost, you know, a deck on either side, going, try and be as unbiased as possible, and, you know, I have to pretend I don't know what's in the hand of the other version of me, and playing, and the floorboards used to creak outside my door, and it would get late at night, and I would hear the floorboards creak, and I would quickly like cover everything up and, you know, get into bed and things like that. But playing with my brothers was when I realized that in terms of gaming, I'm very much a social gamer, and I really enjoy the experience playing with other people. I've never really been into solo gaming as much, even though I've tried. It just makes a massive difference to me when I feel like I'm immersing into a world with others. And I think that that's also been taken into my streaming journey when I've started content creation as well, and being able to share what I'm doing on my game with the people that are watching. It just makes it a lot more enjoyable for me. I definitely enjoy playing games with other people, even if it's me talking about those games to those people, than sitting and playing by myself.
I mean, that paves the way brilliantly for Pokemon GO that we'll be talking about much later. And you can't spell Yu-Gi-Oh without Go. So
that is true.
It's foreshadowing. The fact that you would play against yourself, I mean, roughly how old would you have been at that point?
Good question. I must have been a teenager by this point. It must have been a hobby that started around 11, but really it was around 14, 15 where I wanted to get as good as possible at the things that I was putting my time into and putting my money into, right? This was when I would be spending my pocket money.
Now, it's time for you to entertain us with the second Pokemon on your dream team. So, who's going to be joining Annihilate?
So, the next Pokemon, it's actually another new one. It's King Gambit. And this is a Pokemon that, obviously based on the chess piece, the King, the final evolution of the Pawniard family, Pawniard Bishop, King Gambit. And actually, my family has they do play chess. My dad was actually a chess champion of sorts when he was young, and my brothers and I played chess when we were younger as well. There's a picture of me lurking on the internet somewhere playing chess at 11 years old. It's not the most flattering picture, but it exists somewhere. And King Gambit also, to me, has meaning because of the sense of leadership. And that was a big part of my life growing up with my brothers. The brother below me is actually only 2.5 years younger than me, but actually in height there was always a big difference. You know, I don't know if you know percentiles when you're growing up, and your parents try and measure you and say you're this percentile for your age, your height, your weight, etc. And I was in the 91st percentile growing up, and my youngest brother was in the 25th. Sorry, my younger brother was in the 25th. So although they were only 2 years apart, there was over a foot of height difference for almost the entirety of our teenage years. And that did kind of engender a leadership responsibility for me. And my parents were, especially my mum, she was very much of the approach that it is your responsibility to not only look after your brothers, but also to guide them in the way that they grow up, and the people that they become is going to be shaped by the person that they see, the role model that's immediately above them, and that's you. So yeah, King Gambit.
Oh yeah, a lot of responsibility, of course. Was that ever something that weighed heavily on you, or were you proud to be in that position of responsibility?
A bit of both. I think there are some times when the benefit of being the one with responsibility, you feel it. You're seen in a different way. You're respected in a slightly different way because they know as well that you've taken on the burden of that responsibility. But then at other times, it felt unfair that things that would go wrong, if I was in the vicinity, it was my fault. No matter what input I had, and truth be told, usually it was my fault, so that is fair enough. But the fact that it would always be assumed that no matter what happens, it's like, well, if you're there, it's your job to make sure everything goes smoothly. Sometimes, especially when you're young and you just want to mess around with your brothers, right? And you want to share the responsibility when you all know that you're doing something you shouldn't do, for you to get the sole blame, I was like, this is unreasonable. I didn't even persuade them that much. You know, they were very much in on it themselves, and it's not also, you know, being told off. I'm okay with being told off. It was just that my brothers weren't told off, and I was like, hold on, this is different. This is unfair.
It's fascinating to hear this. I myself am a younger sibling, so yeah, this is filling in some gaps, I guess. Really interesting to hear, and also makes total sense. Your dad being so into chess, that love of gaming in general trickling down to his children. So then, Annihilate and King Gambit, both Generation 9 Pokemon. That is the most recent generation, but we'll see how that continues to develop. But now we're going over into the Appendicitis that you had.
I must have been around 10 or 11 years old, and I believe I was finishing primary school, about to go to secondary school. And it was at an age where you feel immortal, right? Nothing could ever go wrong. And when I had a stomach pain, I was like, this is fine. I'm probably just hungry. And honestly, hunger is a large part of my life. So I was like, I'm sure I'm just hungry. This stomach pain will pass. And it got to a point where I had to go to my mum and say, Mum, my stomach is really hurting. And she took that seriously, because she was like, Fareed, you don't complain a lot. You usually just get on with it. You don't complain a lot. And so we went to go and see. My parents are both doctors, so they had basically friends that they could immediately take me into. And Guernsey's got a different healthcare system to the UK anyway, so they were able to just take me straight to go and see a GP. And they kind of like poke your stomach a little bit. And the GP very quickly said, I think you should go to A&E, because he's not even standing up fully straight. Something's, you know, he's almost like leaning over, and everything is kind of painful. And we go into A&E, and I can't remember exactly if I had scans or what they had, but basically my appendix was so inflamed, they said, this is about to burst immediately. You need to get this out now. It's about to burst. And so I had that operation, and it felt like I was in hospital for months. I'm told it was only a week or two, but it felt like years, and I almost had to like learn how to walk again. I remember as a kid going down the corridors of the hospital not able to use my legs properly, and that was very strange. But also it's quite impactful in the way that it affected when I went to secondary school. And this is obviously a time for many kids where you get to reinvent yourself. It's an opportunity to start a little bit fresh and try and, start that journey to becoming a man. But I was weak. I'd lost a lot of weight and a lot of muscle mass. And I was trying to put that back on. And unfortunately, it came back on far too quickly, and I got a little bit tubby. And so I was like, right, I'm going to try and get into sport. And I didn't really play much sport beforehand, but I really wanted to. It was also the cool thing to do, but also I really wanted to get good at something that was more physical. And so I tried out for the school football team in year 7, right? The 11 to 12, just my year. I wanted to get into the football team. And I found out that actually they had 3 teams, all right? 3 squads of 16 players. That's like 48 players. And there were only 56 people in my year. So I was like, sweet, I'm guaranteed to get into at least the C team. I didn't get into the C team. And that was quite a telling moment for me because I didn't feel like I was that bad at sport. And so that was almost humbling. I don't even know if I can say that was humbling. That was almost worrying for me. And I said to myself, one day I will play first 11 football for this school. That's what I'm going to do. And 7 years later, in upper 6th, right, year 13, I remember sitting in a dressing room, pulling on the number 7 shirt for the first 11 football team. And I remember that was one of the first moments for me where I was like, a younger version of me would be proud of this moment. That was one of the first times that I remember actively thinking back to little Fareed looking up at this version of me would be pretty pleased, given I couldn't even get into the C team in year 7.
And sorry, remind us, how old were you at that moment when you were?
So that was 11 and then 18.
Oh, okay. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was the journey of sport for me at school. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of work put in behind the scenes there. Wow. I mean, first of all, I'm relieved to hear that you were able to get medical attention when you did, because it sounds like, it was really a crucial moment for you. I mean, how long had you been feeling stomach pain up to that point?
I think a number of weeks. Number of weeks, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's be a lesson to everyone listening or watching. Feel like something's wrong, get seen sooner rather than later, and you will thank yourself. And again, I mean, you were talking earlier about how Annihilate, identifying with that Pokemon, channeling the rage towards something positive. You channeled that very, I'm sure when you were that age, being in hospital for a couple of weeks, traumatic experience into ultimately a good number of years later, a positive. Mm-hmm. And I have my suspicions as to what the third Pokemon is going to be joining your dream team off the back of that tail, but remains to be seen. So tell us, who's going to be joining Annihilate?
I mean, if you've guessed this, that would be pretty impressive. But the Pokemon that I was going to go with for this was actually Milotic.
Okay, no, it was not that. I was thinking, because you talk about football, I was thinking maybe Cinderace. But okay, right. Tell us.
I think that the journey for me to go from, as I say, where I was at 11 years old to 18, but then also since then I play a lot of sport, gym, actually any sport, to be honest, and any activity is very big for me. I think that growth in terms of how I look after myself was an important change in my life. But there's also something about Milotic and its serenity and its calm that I think has balanced out the Annihilate aspects that we've discussed earlier that I have felt in myself growing up. Particularly now, I feel like I'm so much more relaxed than I ever remember being when I was younger. And yeah, there is a like a sense of majesty and beauty to Milotic that I really like about that Pokemon. And we've shown drawings, right? So we showed the Luther Pikachu's drawing of Annihilate, and actually I found a very early drawing that I had done of Milotic when I was very young that has been stuck in a cupboard for so many years, but I moved flat recently and I found it again. And so it's on my desk, and so I'll show you as well. This is, I mean, it's not as glamorous as Lou's Annihilate, but this is a pencil drawing of Milotic that I did when I was very young.
That is... wow, you really undersold that. That looks amazing.
So, I mean, it's just a circle pretty much, so it's not quite as glamorous, but I was pretty proud of it. I'm proud enough to share it, so I guess that says something, right?
How old were you when you did that?
Oh, I must have been 15, 16, around.
That's really good.
Age, yeah.
That's really good. I think Lou the Pikachu as well, Lou Actress Chromie, would give a blessing to that drawing. It's really interesting how on your team, I've never thought of these two Pokemon in this way before, but on your team, it's given me the new insight of Annihilate essentially being the antithesis of Milotic, the way you're describing it. As you say, the Serenity of Milotic, just the regal calmness versus Annihilate's rage. And it's brilliant to hear that both of them are on your team. The fact that you are taking into account every aspect of you and every aspect that's been there as you've been growing up. And yes, of course, Feebas, a Pokemon that is described in every Pokedex entry as shabby in appearance. The power of evolution becomes Milotic, an incredibly beautiful sea serpent Pokemon. So, Annihilate, Kingambit, and Milotic. Okay, really fascinating choices you have in your Pokemon here, Fareed, and I look forward to seeing who's going to join them. For now, though, time to become a lawyer.
Yeah, so growing up, I actually, now that I think about it, the first time I was ever asked, what do I want to be when I'm older, I think I was, again, around 11 years old. A lot seemed to happen to me around 11 years old. And my dad said to me, Fareed, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, a Jedi Knight. And he said, I'll come back in a few years. We can talk again then. And that eventually over time changed, and I actually decided that what I wanted to be was an actor. And I really liked performing. I was actually very shy when I was very young, but then I did more drama at school and through my teenage years, and I really liked the idea of performing, entertaining. And I said to my mum, and I said, I think I want to go and try and be an actor. And she goes, I love that for you. Have you considered law or medicine? And I was like, okay, fine. I guess law is slightly closer to acting than medicine or engineering for that matter. So we thought about law. And I used to do a lot of public speaking. And that then went into debating. We did debating cup at school, and I had a lot of success there. And then I did competitions which were called mooting, which is legal debating, so almost like mock court. And again, a lot of success there, like trophies and accolades, and that supported a lot of my applications when I was applying for university. And I always thought, I like English, I like speaking, public speaking, maybe I can go and be a barrister or something. And I actually did some work experience under a barrister, but it just wasn't for me, because it was quite an isolated career. It's not the same as being a solicitor, which is where you're working in a law firm with lots and lots of different lawyers, and there's a bit more of a collegiate atmosphere. And I thought to myself, okay, why don't I go and do that? Because I do want to be around people. I do like to be in a more social environment. Especially at that age, I really wanted to be immersed in all of the different people that were moving to London for me. So I moved to London. I qualified as a lawyer in London, and I've been in London ever since. And the way that I have got closer to my dreams of acting is that I then went and worked in media law. And I'm now a film and television lawyer of sorts. I work for a media company. All of my work relates to media or film or television. And for a number of years, that was the closest I was possibly going to get to a life on screen. Until more recently, which we will come on to, I'm sure.
I cannot for the life of me work out what that next step was, but yeah, I look forward to you illuminating us as to what happened there. Dreams of being a Jedi Knight, are they still there, or?
I think once the sequels came out, my love my love for the franchise dissipated, Charlie, if I'm honest. So maybe in another life.
Real shame. Okay, a Jedi Knight up to the ceiling of whatever film you had seen at that point when you wanted to be a Jedi Knight. I see. Right. Now, you look back... When you're looking back on this, as you said before when you were talking in your first life story topic about your sympathy towards your parents, I'm sure you can understand where they were coming from in terms of not wanting you to go down the acting route. But how much do you regret that now?
I can understand that you want to probably ensure that they have the best platform to succeed as possible, so that one day they have the opportunity to make a choice as to what they want to do with their lives. And I can understand that. And I feel like even though there have been times where I've wanted complete autonomy or independence and the ability to make my own decisions, and especially when you're a teenager, of course you want that. But I am very grateful now, as I say, coming close to 30, that arguably I do have a platform to make the choices and the decisions that my parents have helped set me up to make. And I perhaps wouldn't have had as many choices if I had pursued a less stable or a less reliable career. So I don't have any resentment for being pushed towards a stable career. It's very sensible. Even as a lawyer, like, it's not easy to live in London, for example. It's not cheap to live in London. So I know how fortunate I am to have a stable career, a vocational career that realistically I'm less at risk of things that other people have been at risk of, particularly during the COVID years as well. And now I do feel that I can make a choice, a decision, and I feel like I owe it to myself and to my parents to make that choice and that decision. And somehow I ended up with Pokemon, I guess. I don't know if that was the choice they had in mind, but it's the choice we've made.
Yeah, that's another thing I was reflecting on as you were telling us about that, Fareed. Of course, I am someone who did go down the acting route. Of course, my parents were also considering, you'd probably enjoy law too. That's a bit of presenting. There's a performative aspect to it. And now we've, of course, found each other again through Pokemon. So, diverging routes that then converge once more. And now it's time to converge our routes onto the fourth Pokemon joining your dream team. So who's going to be alongside Annihilate, Kingambit, and Milotic?
So this is a little change from the power and size of the other Pokemon that we've discussed so far. And this one is actually going to be Riolu. And I think that each of the Pokemon I have picked so far have traits that I think are reflective of parts of myself. And Riolu is a Pokemon that I think has a raw energy, but also a fierce loyalty and a sense of responsibility. And I think talking about going into law and also accepting that my parents probably just wanted the best for me. They did, I accept it. And understanding that there is a responsibility on top of that to my younger siblings as well, that I am a role model for them. But also I still feel a sense of freedom in the decisions that I've made in going into law. I don't work in private practice anymore. As I say, I work in-house for a media company, a film and television company. And I feel that I have been a very loyal person growing up, loyal to my brothers, to my parents, to myself as well, and in my relationships and in my friendships. And that loyalty for Riolu, whilst also that freedom of outlook, I think reflects an aspect of my personality that I'm proud of.
Well, another perfectly chosen Pokemon there, Fareed. And the depth to which you've thought about each of your picks and the way you see them and shed new light on them as well, I think is really fascinating. Thank you for opening all of our eyes to that. And another fighting type on the team there, which, again, I think, in the words of your mum when you approached her about acting, love that for you. I think it really works. Now, there is an elephant in the room here, Fareed, a Copperajah in the room. And that is, thus far, the lack of where Pokemon comes into the picture of you growing up and your life story. But I believe that's something that we're going to be able to address as we now talk about, well, hopefully, first of all, setting the scene for where Pokemon came from in your life, and then going all the way qualifying for Pokemon Go Worlds.
Yeah, so I did actually start playing Pokemon at a very young age. It was at a time where I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! As well. And for me, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was where I was competitive, and Pokemon was more where I was relaxing. And this was via the main games. So I remember that one of my early family holidays, we went on a Caribbean cruise. And this was the first time we were really going abroad. And just before the trip, my dad had bought us Game Boys. And prior to that, we had no console. The only console that I'd ever really played on was I went to a friend's house and I would play on his PC and we'd play Zoo Tycoon or a game like that. But I think he had a Pokemon game as well. But we got given these Game Boys for the flight over to the US. And I was given Fire Red. That was actually the first game that I played, the first Pokemon game I played on the Game Boy Advance SP. It was the flip open one. It was very nice. And I remember being on this cruise, and we would stop at various islands, and my parents would say, right, time for an excursion. We get to go out and explore on the island, white water rafting, rowing at midnight and beaches and everything. And I was like, whoa. I have to take down Erica, and then I need to work out how to get out of Vermilion City, because I'm stuck, okay? I'll do the excursion tomorrow. I didn't do a single excursion on this cruise. I do have regret for it, but at the same time, I love that for little Fareed, that he was so dedicated to this game that I really committed to Pokemon at the time, and I just fell in love with the franchise. I fell in love with the idea of Pokemon, and I remember my dad actually once asked me, he goes, Fareed, if you had any wish, what would it be? World peace? Would you solve world hunger? What would your one wish be? Dad, I wish Pokemon were real. And I think that's a wish that many of us have had, right? That's maybe a wish that many of us still have, but Pokemon was just it was a game and a franchise that I had a lot of love for growing up. And I think I must have stopped playing with any semblance of seriousness as I was approaching university. And I think I would still buy the games, but I remember that I often didn't finish the mainline stories. Until Pokemon Go came out, we all downloaded it. I was at university at the time, or I just finished university, I can't quite remember, but I remember downloading it whilst I was living in England, and I played for a few months, and I was like, the idea of this is really cute, because this goes back to wishing Pokemon were real, and this is almost the closest that you're going to get. And I stopped playing not long afterwards. I think when the initial nostalgia had worn off, and I'd stopped playing until COVID, and I went back home, and my youngest brother was still playing Pokemon Go. And I was like, hey, no way, you're still playing. And almost just to have something to do with him, I re-downloaded the game. And he said, Freak, did you know you can battle people now? And I was like, ooh, competition. You're speaking my language. And I learned how to get into PvP. And I got pretty good at it. And I remember really looking for people that not only played Pokemon Go, but also played Pokemon Go PvP. And there weren't a huge number, but it was addictive, and I couldn't get enough. And I just, every single game, every single match, I was thinking to myself, there must be a way to optimize this. And I would think back to the way that I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And with a card game, and obviously with Pokemon TCG now, there is almost mathematical ways of getting things optimal. And I was like, there must be that for Pokemon Go as well. But the game was still in its early years. I didn't start as early as some players have. I didn't start in Season 1 of Pokemon Go PvP. I started, I think, around Season 5 in-game. And so I was playing catch-up to the top players. But also I feel like I was early enough that, especially looking back now, many people would say, oh, you've been playing, you've been playing for years. You're one of the staples in the PvP format and things. So I do remember the first time I hit Legend in the Go Battle League, which is the master rank, the top rank in the in-game ladder. And that was a huge moment for me. And then I discovered that there was this format that people called Show 6. Not in-game, not the in-game ladder, but competing against other people where you would have a team of 6 and you would choose 3 of them. Show 6, pick 3. And I was like, ooh, I like this. I like that the community has developed a way of competing in Pokemon Go outside of the way that you play in-game. It's something different. And my first experience of Play Pokemon Show 6 was London Worlds 2022. And that was very close to me, so I thought I'd go and attend and I'd dabble. And I wasn't particularly good at Show 6 at that point, so nothing really came of that, but that was my first experience of just Show 6 in the Play Pokemon circuit. And a few months later, I thought to myself, do you know what? I'm going to compete in a real-life regional. This is crazy. I'm going to fly to a different country with friends to play Pokemon. Never done that before. Almost laughable to me at the time. And I went to Warsaw. 2 years from now, actually. We've got Gdansk this month, and Warsaw was my first regional event, and I came second. And I qualified for the World Championships in Japan. I had dreamed growing up of competing in gaming tournaments, and I actually remember that I had actually played a championship series event for Yu-Gi-Oh when I was younger, and that went pretty well. But the idea of going abroad, of flying to places, was one thing. The idea of going to Japan, a country that I have always loved the idea of visiting. I think many of us have, right? The home of Pokemon. To compete in the World Championships, I actually think I developed imposter syndrome very quickly after that. I was like, hold on a minute. This was my first regional event. I don't belong in the World Championships. And I think many other players also felt that I didn't belong in the World Championships. They were like, who's this guy? He's just turned up. He doesn't know what he's doing. I didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't do very well in the World Championships. I think I went 0-2. I was out almost straight away. Partly because of preparation and jet lag, but also it was still very new for me. Back in that season, it wasn't a case of you needed to play at every event. It was once you qualified, you qualified. So I didn't really play a huge amount after that. But after those World Championships, I got the bug. I got that hunger to take this really seriously. And I started studying, and I started learning, and I just started sponging every piece of information I could about this game. Every number, every colour, every type, anything and everything that there was to learn. I was like, learn it. And I started competing at more regional events and doing well. I've come second 3 times now. I'm still in the hunt for gold, but I've come second 3 times. In terms of competition, I mean, at the time of recording, I've got 5 top cuts in my last 5 events, including the World Championships in Honolulu, Hawaii. I'm still going to play until I get a gold medal, and then I will feel that I could retire on a high. I don't know if I'll be able to ever get the bug out, though, because there is something about competing that it is a fire inside you, and you feel that passion, that burning passion that I live for it. I have something outside of my work and outside of my normal day-to-day life that is almost like a new life and a new purpose and drive that is it's insatiable.
Bitten by the charger bug. Absolutely. It's such a thriving and, well, just wonderful scene, and also the opportunity to visit places in the world, just as you were saying, that ordinarily you might not have the opportunity to do so. And, I know that you're on the hunt for that first win, that gold medal. I hope too, though, you can be incredibly proud of course, you just told us there that the first event you attended, you came second, but the consistency of coming second multiple times and top-cutting multiple events. There's an argument, that winning is one thing, but it's that consistency that you're after, because then you know that the win is just around the corner somewhere. And I hope you also now know, looking back on that first event in Warsaw, that yes, maybe you had the imposter syndrome then, but I hope you feel now that you've proved to yourself that, no, I'm here for a reason.
Yeah, I'm very proud and pleased with where I've come to. I feel very lucky, but also I know it's been a lot of hard work, but I feel very lucky because I think a lot of people have passions and put a lot of time into things. And for me to have such a tangible almost tangible feedback, tangible validation that the effort and the time and the investment into what I enjoy has borne fruit. And I know that I will always want gold because I'm a competitor. Of course, you always want to win, but no matter what happens, I am very pleased and proud of everything that I've achieved so far in the game.
And so you should be. We're going to go from now into the next Pokemon joining your team alongside Annihilate, King Gambit, Milotic, and Riolu.
Sure. So we've talked about getting the bug. We've talked about the burning fire. My next pick's Volcarona. And it's all I didn't actually plan for it to be as smooth as that, Charlie, but I will take it.
Hey.
there is something about Volcarona that I think is just awesome. It's like almost like Arcanine in a way that it's like there's something mythical and legendary about it without it actually being a legendary Pokemon. But also we talked about fire previously in the sense of Annihilate's Rage, that burning aspect. And I fully accept that was a part of my life, and the way that I channeled that was an aspect of my growing up and my coming of age. But there is still a fire in me. And the way that it displays itself now is different. It's not that rage of Annihilate, but it's almost that power, that beauty of Volcarona, that fire is something that people can worship, but also people can fear. And there's something about a Pokemon like Volcarona that I think it's just very exciting, very interesting, very admirable. And I really rate Volcarona. I think that Fiery Dance is exactly how I approach my gameplay when I'm a very aggressive player, but also it's not entirely random. There is a randomness, but it's not entirely let loose. There is a controlled aspect to it as well.
Well, once more, perfectly summarized. And yeah, as you say, whereas Volcarona is not itself a legendary Pokemon, certainly the circumstances under which you find it in Generation 5, a temple, it's there sort of enshrined at the top of this cavernous room within that temple, it is certainly lent an aura of mystique to it. And channeling it all, it really does all come back to that rage from Annihilate, doesn't it? Fascinating. And it's time that we Fiery Dance over from there onto now becoming a caster.
So this was crazy for me. This still doesn't feel real. That I've mentioned I've always dreamed of being an actor, on being on screen. I've tried to get as close as I can to media, to film, to television. And then all of a sudden I'm playing a Pokemon game as an adult. Crazy to me already. I was like, as if I'm doing this. But when I would do well, I would get interviewed. And we've mentioned Lou a couple of times. Lou was the first person that interviewed me at a regional event. And she said to me afterwards, she goes, Freed, you're very well spoken. You know what you're talking about. Have you ever considered casting? And I thought to myself, well, I do know quite a lot about the game, and I do like presenting and entertaining. And I was like, yeah, definitely. I absolutely love that opportunity. I think I just got very lucky that because of my interviews, they already had examples of footage of the way that I could speak about the game. And I got the opportunity to cast first in Utrecht last year, being remunerated for something that you love and would want to do anyway. I'm like, this doesn't feel real. I would happily talk about Pokemon and Pokemon GO in competitions, but actually there is that recognition of your value and what you can contribute to the scene. That is one thing. Then there is that ability to actively educate, entertain, inform, bring a community closer together because of your love for this game, for this franchise, and for this industry. That it's a different kind of responsibility. It's one that I'm very, very grateful for, one that I've relished in my time, that one that I'm very much looking forward to seeing where it can go from here as well, whether that's within Pokemon, whether that's on screen elsewhere as well. I think that it's an opportunity that I feel so lucky to have been given, and I want to make the most of it. I want to see people watching and listening and looking at these events and being inspired. And I love the idea of any person coming out of a conversation or just from listening to a cast and feeling like they can do something, they can achieve something, they can follow their dreams, they can win medals or just have an experience that they didn't once expect themselves to be able to have. That the idea of that to me really does drive me.
We were talking about positions of responsibility, and it certainly is that, as you say, the opportunity to be able to inspire people, whether it's within Pokemon or not, just to pursue things they enjoy. And that's a theme that comes out of these episodes a lot. The quicker you lean into the things that you enjoy, the sooner you find often that you're able to thrive, and that's obviously a wonderful thing. Yes, I remember I was also casting Utrecht for the video game side of things, of course, at your very first event, Pokemon GO in Utrecht, and I had no doubt that you would absolutely knock it out of the park, and lo and behold, clearly you did. And it's been wonderful that you've got so much out of it. Well, also just wonderful that, you know, thinking back to when you were talking to your mum about wanting to pursue acting, that you now have the opportunity to, albeit not acting, still be basically as adjacent to that as you possibly can be without actually acting. And I remember you saying to me before you've always enjoyed informing younger people, talking to younger people. Maybe that's because you're an elder sibling yourself. But yeah, I mean, that's it's the dream scenario for you.
I like I say, I feel so lucky to have found my way into, you know, you could only describe it as a perfect role of your love of gaming, your love of presenting, being around like-minded people, meeting people such as yourself. You know, these opportunities, bringing people from potentially different worlds together, the inclusiveness also of this. Of the Pokemon world, right? The diversity that we see in the different kinds of people that all share that same love. I feel so fortunate.
Wonderful. Well, a perfect springboard then to discover who's going to be rounding out your dream team, Farid.
Okay, so hopefully I've shared a lot of myself, and it has shown that I am a dreamer. I will always be a dreamer. I have been for the whole of my childhood, and even now I have dreams that I cannot wait to try and pursue. And so my final pick is Bagon, the Pokemon that dreams of flying. And this could not resonate with me more, because there's almost that reckless obstinance that it knows it cannot fly, but it will throw itself anyway. And that's how I approach things. I cannot wait to take risks to go and try and achieve the things that I would like to try and achieve. And Bagon to me is the perfect illustration of that.
Bagon. Well, you hear that?
There we go.
There he is. That's really strange to hear, because I actually got myself this after being offered the first cast that I did for exactly the reasons that you just said there, Farid. So, yeah, perfectly well put again. Bagon ultimately evolves into Salamence, Pokemon that can fly, dragon and flying Pokemon. But as it is, yeah, we'll just continue to throw himself off things, hoping that he can fly. And also can have the ability Rockhead, described, I think, as a Rockhead Pokemon, because building up that stamina and resilience, more, you know, we've got to fail in order to ultimately be able to, quite literally, fly. And so, perfect rounding out of the team there. And that means that your 6 Dream Team Pokemon, Farid, are Annihilate, Kingambit, Milotic, Riolu, Volcarona, and Bagon. And such a well-rounded team it is. I love that you've got a couple of little guys on there as well, with Riolu and Bagon, and really good type diversity too. Just, you know, as a passing interest, certainly not a requirement of building the team. We only have the one doubled up type with fighting between Riolu and Annihilate, but as it is, you've got Ghost Fighting, Dark Steel, you've got the other fighting in Riolu, Bugfire, Dragon, and Water, of course, with Milotic. So, fascinating team, and now it's time to ask, Which of these Pokemon are you going to choose to be your partner?
I think that each of the Pokemon have reflected different parts of my personality, as we've said. And I think that the aspect that is most important to me is loyalty. And so Riolu would be my partner Pokemon.
Wow. Okay. As I was asking that question, I thought, yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Sometimes it's pretty clear which way someone's going to go for their choice of partner Pokemon, but I really wasn't. I thought, if anything, it would be nudging Annihilate just because of the journey that you've been on since. But, yeah, Riolu, I think there's both an aspirational aspect to that as well as a remembering your roots aspect to it, as well as being, as we were saying, a little Pokemon and a dreamer. It sort of represents that dreaming element as well, I guess. So Riolu, also a nice partner-shaped Pokemon and sized Pokemon. So
practical, right?
A fantastic choice there for Riolu. All right, and now a different kind of question. If you were a Pokemon, what do you think you would be?
I think this has been the hardest question. The way to measure and reflect upon yourself and narrow it down to one Pokemon's tough, especially when, I've just given 6 almost very different Pokemon that have reflected different parts of myself. If I were to be one Pokemon, I don't like the idea of viewing myself as a final form Pokemon. There's just something about it that I'm just like, I'm not final form yet, but I am ambitious and I do want to achieve things that a future version of myself would look back on and be like, that was legendary. And so I'm going to go with Kubfu.
Yeah. Your choice of words, I can see you behind the scenes deciding when exactly to drop in certain words. But yeah, legendary, I thought, ooh, this could well be a Kubfu, and I know you're a fan of Urshifu as well. In fact, if anything, I'm slightly surprised that Urshifu wasn't on the team, but what a way to bring it in here. Kubfu, and it's a fighting type, as I was saying, I think that chimes with you really, really well. It's got that aspirational aspect to it. I really like that reasoning of not wanting to go with a final evolution form Pokemon too. It's fantastic to see some love being shown for the Pokemon that are yet to evolve. So, Kubfu, I think that's a really good answer. What do you all think? Do you agree that Fareed / TomahawkUK would be a Kubfu, if anything, based on everything we've heard about Fareed so far? Let us know in the comments. We would be fascinated to hear. Speaking of you all, it's time for your community questions. I posted online, as I always do, asking for questions for Fareed, and thank you so much for submitting them. I apologise as ever if I mispronounce any of your names or handles. So, first of all, Ericsson52797 would like to know, how are you holding up after Skarmory's moveset adjustment? It's been a little while, but I'd imagine it's been tough for you to accept. Restless nights and exasperation. And I was quoting word for word what Ericsson wrote there, so thank you for that question.
He's spot on. I've realised we haven't actually talked too much about Pokemon Go itself, but this question does relate to an attack update that Skarmory received in Pokemon Go that has taken it very much out of the meta. Although I did very recently bring a Shadow Skarmory to Louisville regional in North America, and I top cut with it. So even though it did receive a heavy nerf, Skarmory, its typing is so useful, its defensive profile is so useful. You can never write Skarmory off. It's not been a fan favorite for some Pokemon Go players because of its defensive profile and how many different types it shuts down. But there's something very, very funny about Ariados, for example, being meta and responding to it with a steel flying type Pokemon such as Skarmory. So yeah, definitely not meta at the moment, but that's my kind of Pokemon.
But the question is, how are you holding up after the moveset adjustment?
Yeah, it's very sad that it hasn't received the love from the community that I think it deserves. But the reason why I think I'm doing okay is because when people don't like a Pokemon, that often is when I like it most. So it's not good at the moment. It's not strong in the game at the moment. And there's something about that that makes it more attractive to me. We'll be okay, Ericsson. Don't worry. We'll be okay.
Again, that aspirational facet to you coming through, just wanting to make Skarmory work. whatever happens. And yeah, as you say, that typing, steel and flying, one that we have barely seen otherwise within Pokemon. And such a useful one it is too. Well, thank you for your question, Ericsson. Thanks for your answer, Fareed. Now, a mind joke Pogo would like to know, what's your secret to being so well groomed at tournaments, even as a player? Is it a strategy to instill fear?
I see. Immediately strokes beard. That no, I just interestingly, it's just reminded me of a piece of advice that I can't remember if I read it or if someone said it to me. They said to me, "Dress every day as if you're going to meet the love of your life." And I don't know if I've ever taken that seriously or directly, but I do feel that presentation has always been quite important to me, and I think that obviously helps when it comes to casting. But even going to the shops, I do find myself making sure I feel good, and they all tie into each other. I'm very much of the view that, you know, good mental health, good physical health, think healthy, act healthy, they all tie in together as much as possible. And I don't know, there is something about presenting yourself in a way that you're proud of is one part of that. So I have a day 2 routine of I will bring a shirt to Pokemon Go regionals to wear on day 2, always. And I don't know why that is, but if you're going to be on camera, I'm like, hey, have a collar.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. It all, you know, every little decision can go into informing how we're feeling that day, and that ultimately all plays into, well, I mean, how well we play, but also just more generally, our mental health, how we feel about ourselves. And it's taking care of those little things, like also making sure you have a good meal, making sure you're taking care of those basic things, and feeling good about the image of yourself that you're putting out into the world can go a long way. So thank you for that really insightful answer there, Fareed, and thank you for your question, Mind Joke Pogo. Emmy Weedle now, a player that I spoke to on the podcast in the 5th episode, EOIC champion from 2020 full season, so do go and check that out if you haven't already. Would like to know, why is Skarmory your favourite Pokemon?
Thank you, Maxwell. So there was actually a roundtable discussion a number of months ago with players and content creators and casters in the Pokemon Go space, where we were talking about what changes we might like to see to the meta at the time. And this included the world champion at the time, casters, as I say, and lots of very outspoken individuals. And the view at the time from the majority of them was that Skarmory needed to be nerfed. And truth be told, Skarmory is not my favourite Pokemon. It never has been. I've never, actually, other than Louisville that I just mentioned a couple of weeks ago, other than that, I've never ever used Skarmory in a Play Pokemon event. But I felt at the time that Skarmory had a place in the meta and that we shouldn't nerf it just yet. And I voiced that opinion on this call, which was being streamed. And very shortly after that, it became the running joke, mostly propounded by Inadequance, who decides to mention it on every single stream that we cast together, that Skarmory is my favourite Pokemon. And I did lean into it, right? That is part of the reason that I did bring it to Louisville, Shadow Skarmory. Shadow, though, which is cooler. But yeah, I think Maxwell is leaning into that long-standing joke there.
I see. Yeah. Well, it fooled me. Obviously, that's not a question I've necessarily asked you before, so I read that and I thought, oh, how interesting. But yeah, good to get the context on that there. Just for anyone who's not familiar, can you just briefly explain Shadow Pokemon?
So, in Pokemon Go, we have a feature that is the shadow variants of certain Pokemon. And the idea is that in-game, the Team Rocket, which we call Team Go Rocket, they have turned a number of Pokemon into shadow variants. The way that it works in practice, for PvP especially, is that any Pokemon that is shadow will have 20% higher attack and 20% less defense. So let's say you're using a Lapras, a non-shadow Lapras. it'll have its standard base stats, but then there may also be a shadow form. Not every Pokemon has a shadow form, but there is a shadow Lapras. It'll use 20% higher attack than your normal Lapras and will have 20% lower defense in practice. So they can be risky, they can be harder hitting, but they are squishier. We would call them squishy, but lots of Shadow Pokemon have a lot of popularity in Pokemon Go, particularly in the Show 6 format. So Shadow Feraligatr and Shadow Drapion are two examples of very popular Shadow Pokemon. And other Pokemon that have Shadow variants, you still may not opt for that Shadow variants on the basis that you don't want to lose 20% extra defense, and the 20% gain in attack isn't worth it for you.
Very well summarised, and I'd expect nothing less. So I hope that cleared up any confusion there, in case there was any. And thank you very much for your questions there. Thank you for your answers, Fareed. If you'd like to submit a question for a future guest on Chazingdra Chats, you can find me on X at Chazingdra. That's where I post out the question call-outs. I'd love to hear what you'd love to hear. So then, Fareed, we've heard a lot about you up to now. What's next for you?
So we are casting a lot more this season, which I'm very, very excited about. I will be casting the Latin America International Championships in Sao Paulo, Brazil, which I think will be an incredible event. As a result of casting a lot more, I'm not able to compete in as many European events as I was competing in last year, and so that's why many Pokemon Go players, you'll be seeing me in North American events. I've been popping over for the weekend to compete in some of those, and so my next competitive event will be in Toronto, Canada, which I'm very excited about because I've not been to Canada before either. So if I can whip in a trip to Niagara Falls as well, then happy days. Otherwise, I am also interested in seeing where this extra screen time can take me. I would love to get more opportunities on screen now that we've ventured into this world, Charlie. I see you performing and it's inspiring, and I would love to see if I can delve more into that world as well.
Very exciting times indeed for you, Fareed, and also thrilled to see you doing your first international championships, and very excited to see how you get on there. Finally, Fareed, looking back from now, as Pokemon Go caster, someone who has so many fantastic results to their name as a player, all the way back to the Fareed moving to Guernsey when they were very young, growing up as the eldest of 4 children. What advice would you give to that younger you?
Charlie, I'm going to share something that I feel that I have learned over time that I can only wish that I knew when I was even younger. And that is this idea as a performer of my audience. And this is what I would tell to my younger self. And I would basically say, everyone dreams of being the protagonist of their own story. And sometimes in life there are very difficult decisions to make, and it's very difficult in the moment to know what decision you should go for. But if you want to be the protagonist of your story, remember that you've got an audience that also wants you to be the protagonist of your story. And imagine that you have your own audience that is comprised of the people that you care about most and that care about you. This can be your friends, your family, your favorite school teacher, but this also includes past versions of yourself, future versions of yourself. Anyone who really cares about your well-being, they can be in your audience. And when you make a decision, when you're faced with any conflict or fork in the road, just take a moment to have a think about what your audience would want for you, because they're rooting for you. They really, really want the best for you. And this is an approach that I've taken more recently. When I am faced with a situation, I think to myself, what would past Fareed, what would he have wanted for me? What will future Fareed one day look back and be proud of? What would my family, if they were watching in this moment, let's say if I'm in a conflict, for example, what would the people who care about me want me to respond with? Because we do it every single time we watch TV. Every single time we're rooting for a protagonist, there's a part of us that's willing them to do the things that we would expect a protagonist to do. And if you can take that upon yourself, I would tell a younger version of me to not worry about the opinions of people that aren't in your audience, not worry about the peer pressure, not worry about the people that don't truly care for you, but worry about the people that do, and live your life in a way that you can look back and be proud of every decision you make, or at least know that you had a think about it at the time and accept that that was the decision you made with that knowledge.
Wow, I've never heard that particular piece of advice before, but it's a great way, I think, of... Sometimes we can get all too consumed by everything that's going on in our head, and just being able to project that focus outwards a little bit, taking the pressure off ourselves. And I think that speaks volumes as well of the fact that you are an elder sibling, and the idea of this community around you. You've always been very close to your family, is the impression that we're getting here, and now you're very close within the Pokemon GO community, so that makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much for that wisdom there, Farid. And I'm sure that plenty of people are taking away a huge amount from that, and the chat does not end there, because now we'll be getting into TomahawkUK / Farid's Rapidash round. Okay. 15 minutes or so of bonus questions that Farid has not prepared for. Questions like the origins of this in-game name, TomahawkUK. Favourite place that Farid has visited for playing a Pokemon event, and fundamentally, the secret to success, such consistent results. What advice would Farid give to a player who wants to try and achieve that level of play? If that would be what you'd like to hear, then get on over to my Patreon. That is linked in the description below, where you can also support me as a creator. Fundamentally, I really appreciate the fact that you've listened to this episode as it is, so no worries at all if you're not in a position to be able to do that. But if you'd like to get to know Farid that a little bit better, then you can do so over on the Patreon, again, linked below. And Farid, thank you so much for all of the time and care that you put into your answers there. It's really fantastic to get your insight on so many things. And as I say, so much wisdom that I'm sure plenty of people are taking away from that. And just on a personal level, always a joy to have a chat with you. So thank you.
Appreciate it, Charlie. Been a pleasure to be here.
No, pleasure's all mine. And if people want to keep up with you online, where can they find you?
TomahawkUK, sometimes Tomahawk_UK, all of my socials. If you can find me on X, then there's a link in my bio that can take you to my socials on YouTube, on TikTok, and on Twitch. And I look forward to seeing you guys there.
Do go and check out Farid's socials as well as streams. Get the insight of such a professional player. And time for a bit of good old YouTube spiel. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do like and subscribe. All those things really, really do help so much. Thank you, Farid. And drop a comment as well. Farid's given us so much food for thought, as we were saying. Would love to know your own thoughts. If Farid's 6 Dream Team Pokemon tie in with any of your favourites, what would your Dream Team Pokemon be? Let us know in the comments below. Would be absolutely fascinated to hear. Also on the channel, I vlog the events that I cast as a video game caster. I do silly comedy skits. I stream as well. If you're a fan of everything that the Pokemon video games have to offer, then the channel is the place for you. And we have more than 30 episodes of this podcast now, so there's bound to be more episodes on the channel that you would enjoy. I've talked with, as I said, Emmy Wheeler, as well as Lumberger, Pokemon Go caster, Lou the Pikachu, Inadequate as well, Out of Pocket NAIC champion from 2024, so make sure you're going and checking that out. As well as, I mean, the aim of the show is to broadcast as broad a range of people from the Pokemon community as possible, so people from the VG space, TCG, Unite, as well as more casual players and influencers, YouTubers, all kinds of things, so make sure you're going and checking that out. All my socials linked below as well. I'm at Chazingdra across everything, X and Blue Sky and Instagram and TikTok as well. Also, below I've got my Discord community. If you want to continue to share our love for everything that the Pokemon video games have to offer, would be a pleasure to see you in there. You can use the hashtag 6Pokemon 1 Life Story to spread the word about the podcast as well, and episodes drop every Wednesday. Alright then, Farid, it's time to get into your Rapidash round. So if you're not joining us over on Patreon for that, then it's goodbye from Farid. And it's goodbye from me. See you next time on Chazingdra Chats, where there'll be another 6 Pokemon, 1 Life Story. Alright then, how are you feeling about these bonus questions?
I think we'll be okay. I think you gave me a flavour. I think I can come up with something juicy. Just for you.
Okay, great. So, first of all, what's your biggest fear? No, I'm joking. What is... We will start with...